My first live stream, 15 minutes late this morning. I'm usually live at my 6:30 a.m. I had a couple clients a little bit earlier today who ran a little bit late. So 15 minutes late, but I'm here. I'll give you a bit of a rundown as we get started. I'm going to be going live in roughly 4 hours again. So my 11 a.m. will be, if you're in America on the East Coast, 9 p.m. Thursday night. I'm going to be going live with Chilltown Boxing. TJ, you'll know him from YouTube, from Twitter. Now they call that X. He's on my channel. He's in our Discord. He's a handicapper, a sharp bettor. A lot of people reach out to me who want to come on the live stream, and you put a lot of trust and you try to do your due diligence when you're either saying yes or no. And TJ, this dude's a beast. You know what I'm saying? My point is I wouldn't just let anybody on the live stream, especially regarding the advice and the knowledge I'm offering to you guys. I take this very seriously, especially what you guys get from this end, whether it's me telling you what I've seen in a specific fight, whether it's me telling you where to put your money. Money is hard earned. The last thing I'm ever going to do is be reckless about that and bring on somebody who's wasting my time and your time. So Chilltown Boxing, TJ, if you know him personally, he is a beast, man. And I don't say that lightly. So he'll be on in a few hours. We're going to be obviously covering the Bud Canelo fight card. We're going to be talking about some other things. I keep it in the script when I'm doing these live streams. I have a plan of attack to talk to you guys about, obviously. With Chilltown, I just gave him a couple things. I said we could start with Canelo Bud, and then we're going to leave the door open for you guys. So if you could tap into that, make sure you set your bell notification. It's in a couple hours, 9 p.m. on the East Coast tonight, in a couple hours, about 4 hours. So yeah, look forward to that. I just woke up, guys. I guess the French card, there was that French card. Kevin Saggio was on that card. I was going to ask you guys. I put it up in the Discord. I didn't bet on it. I didn't break those fights down. Slow boxing week. And I was just wondering if you guys got any results on the ladies, because people were messaging me, and I saw in the Discord a lot of people were kind of asking me about it. So that would have been the Rina Ayadi fight. You had Kevin Saggio fighting Belucio and Rina Ayadi versus Turhan. I didn't bet. I didn't get action. I didn't put a parlay up. I was just wondering for some of the boys in the Discord, if you guys do have those results, put them in the comment section below. There are new members, guys. Our Discord's growing every single day. So I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome all the newbies to the insider group here. As you're looking on the live stream, the people with the stars, those are Johnny Says Boxing Insiders. You get more accessibility to myself on social media. You get access on the YouTube channel. But more importantly, you become part of the Discord. That Discord is popping. It's growing. Every morning I wake up, I see new people joining. You have to join here first. That link is pinned in the comment section. It's a couple bucks a month. And welcome to all the newbies and the OGs. I say welcome. All right, I'm tapping in. As you guys tap in, like the video, boxing fan, Tony Mack, we got a new one. Bell to ass on these likes. What's up, Mar? Mar the Prince, Ohio in the house. Salute. Pablo, what's up, buddy? Saw Edition, CF. Oh, yeah, so I'll talk to you in a second. What's up, South Ball Talk? So, guys, as you know, the longer you're on my channel, I'm very negotiable, meaning that I'm not, it's kind of how my personality is. I'm not married to any specific, even like way of thought. I have my strict boundaries. I'm ethical. I have strong morals in how I live my day-to-day life. But in terms of my creative flow, when I'm writing, when I'm interviewing people, the Discord, for instance, my YouTube channel, if you guys think that we should go a different route on any sort of method, and I get enough people asking, I'm going to do it. For a few months, you guys were asking about a Discord. We started the Discord, and now that's been a great move on your end, so I thank you. Also, over the last month, you guys have been asking for me to add another channel within the same Discord, and I added it yesterday. So for all of you football fans, American football, the season starts. We added an NFL and college football channel. I told you guys in the first post on the Discord, though, don't expect video breakdowns. Don't expect stats don't lie videos on the college football, NFL stuff. But I will share with you my picks and I already got a long parlay cooking. The re and before I even, before a couple months ago, up until January, my boxing channel here was only me breaking down fights. I never gave you guys my predictions. It wasn't a gambling show. We didn't do these live stream betting shows with me giving you odds. You guys asked for me last January, Johnny, why don't you give me your prediction? Why don't you tell us who's going to win? So now that's what we are. I've always bet on boxing. I've always bet on MMA. There were no fights this week except the Dana White Contender Series. I gave you a winning parlay there. I gave you a winning parlay last week. So when a lot of channels are kind of slower, just boxing channels, we're finding wins. I always say it. We're archaeologists. My point is, I also bet on college football. In 2015, I was in Australia for 2 years at that point. I just got my permanent residency. In Australia, if you're a traveler, you're not allowed to get a ABN, an Australian business number, which allows you to run a business. So I had to wait 2 years to get my residency. I got an ABN, and I started coaching at a health club. The way the business model worked at that health club, I worked there for 7 years. It was there were 30 other coaches there, and it was similar. The business model was kind of like a tattoo artist, a tattoo shop. If you don't own the tattoo shop and you're doing tattoos there, you pay for the chair. So you're paying to be there essentially, and then you run your business from that chair. You make your own rates, you bring your own clients, and then once a week or once a fortnight, you pay rent. That's how the gym I worked at went. So going into my first year, I think it equated to $25,000 a year rent, and you would pay every 2 weeks, fortnightly they call it. In 2015, college football season, I hit a parlay. I built it up. I started betting $50 bets, and then I hit week 1, and then I won a couple $100, and then I carried that over to week 2, and I hit week 2, and by week 3, I made a $2,000 bet, and this is a true story. And so I take that $2,000 bet and do a 15-leg parlay on it, all money line, and it hit. And I ended up hitting for, I think, $25,000, a little bit over 25K, and I paid my first year rent up front. So I went to my gym, and rather than having to deduct every fortnight, I was like, can I pay this up front to take some stress off of the year to allow me to build a business, build clientele base? And so I did, and I did that. And I remember my first, that set me up even to what I'm doing now. Fast forward a decade, running a strength and conditioning business out of my house, writing books, being a published author, doing YouTube. It all started with that. Now, did I ever hit another bet like that ever again? No. Have I ever, bet thousands of dollars on a 20-leg parlay? No. But I do bet on college football. I do bet on the NFL. We have a new channel on our Discord. And it's for you NFL and football fans. More than anything, it gives you guys a chance to talk about the football game separately, but keep that chat separate. And then I gave you my parlay. So I have a 20-leg working. The 2 legs came in. The biggest odds, dude, because in Australia on my betting app, it allows me to piece together $1.08, $1.10. The Buckeyes are playing. The biggest odds are the Buckeyes versus Texas. It's kind of a 50-50 game considering Ohio State returning national champions, playing Texas in Columbus. Texas has a Heisman hopeful quarterback, Arch Manning, and we have a redshirt freshman. And I think there's a statistic in college football, teams that are playing the number 1 team with a first-year quarterback are 0-18. So statistically, the odds are against Columbus, against the Buckeyes. But when you look at our squad, our roster, we got Jeremiah at receiver. We just got to hope that Super Saiyan, our quarterback, gets him the ball. So anyway, that football thread is up. Not a lot of boxing this weekend. We know that. Howdy, gentlemen. EV 44 ounce in the house. Boston Mikey, we appreciate you. Pedro Corbalis, my cousin, just hit a 15-legger and he skydived because of it. Nice, Pedro. Hopefully he survived that skydive. I know it's boxing. But Nathan Ibarra. What's up, Nathan? What's up, man? I hope all's well. I know you don't like the clown fights, but I'm betting on Tony this weekend. He's a big dog. Okay. Nathan Ibarra. I'm just seeing everyone checking in. I'll get to all these comments. You boys are beasts. Saw the additional. Let's go. How close is the Albert Bell fight? We'll get to Albert Bell in a second. Pedro, go Buckeyes. Rudy Pedroza. Lloyd Henderson in the house. I think Lloyd's from the Philippines, right? Poncho Rams and Trojans right here. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to get to Nathan's question first, and then I'll get to the Albert Bell fight. So Nathan says, what's up, man? I hope all is well. I know you don't like the clown fights, but I'm betting on, he's talking about El Kukui, Tony Ferguson this weekend. He's a big dog. I don't see how. All right, Nathan Ibarra. So I'm not getting odds to bet on that fight. The only fight I'm getting odds to bet on that Misfits card is the only fight, I think, between a ranked actual boxer, and that is Sean Hemphill. BoxRec has him ranked 44 in the world at light heavyweight. He's fighting a guy in Thai who was in prison for over 10 years for killing a guy in a street fight back in 2010, 2009. I actually shared that story in our Discord. I shared the whole entire thing about Thai getting locked up. Regarding the other fights, Al Kukui versus Salt Poppy. Now, if you're a combat sports fan, traditionally, you know that Tony Ferguson at one time was that dude at 155. But I would have taken him over anybody in the world at 155. People forget how dominant Tony Ferguson was in the octagon. His style. Now, he was never, you know, he never had a specific style. He was on record, you know, training himself. He would go into the mountains in California and do his fight camps up there. But he was durable. He was unpredictable. He was super creative in the octagon. He was a fan favorite, and he was invincible until he wasn't. And that's usually what happens in combat sports. The older you get caught once, you start losing once, and it starts going downhill. And I think Kukui ended up leaving with, you know, what, a 6-7 fight losing streak. Just wasn't the same guy. Bad luck. Never got that Khabib fight. We really wanted to see him versus Khabib when they were both, especially when Tony was in his prime. You know, he tears his knee one time tripping over a microphone cord at the press conference. And then, you know, I think Khabib pulled out one of the fights, and it just didn't happen. You know, 40 years old now, fighting a kid in Salt Poppy. And I did my due diligence yesterday on the live stream. I think his last name is Bustamante. And I was looking at the kid, man. The kid got hands, dude. I was actually impressed. Of all the influencers, or however you guys want to call this, circus boxers, I did not expect to see Salt Poppy actually have boxing skills. Bro, I was impressed. I mean, you don't have to beat you don't need to have a world-class skill set to beat Tony Ferguson in boxing. So, to your point, the odds, I agree. I think anytime a former, you know, I think Tony might have had the interim world title at 55. Anytime somebody who is that, you know, storied in a combat sport is fighting against an influencer, even though it's a boxing match, I think it should always be a 50-50 fight. Am I betting on that fight? No. So I'm not betting on that fight. And I'm not getting options to bet on that fight. I didn't bet on the French fights yesterday. To get to, somebody asked about Albert Bell. I did my tape on Albert Bell. I didn't upload a video. I'm still not happy with my goddamn lens. I told you I got my Sony Alpha, my A2 fixed, my high quality. The camera when you know, we got it for the documentary was about 4,000, and the lens I use is a Sigma lens. Gorgeous lens. It's the lens I got touched up, and I had to get my camera recalibrated. It's right here. I'm looking at it. And I need to go back to the camera shop on George Street, George's Camera, shout out, to get it recalibrated. Because when I'm zooming in, that's why I didn't do any Stats Don't Lie videos. And thank God this was a slow week and not the Canelo Bud week. But by Monday next week, that camera will be fixed, and I'll be doing my Stats Don't Lie videos again. I just don't want to shoot them on my iPhone. Yeah, so we got a lot of stuff coming out. Muscle Brown in the house. You bet the French underdog. The Turkish girl won. And that's who I thought. Okay, when you guys were asking about the fights, I said take the Turkish girl. She won by knockout. Nice. For all the D-gens who won in the French chick fight. There we go. D-gens. So, yeah. I would have taken... I told you guys earlier in the week I was going to take Sajo by knockout and the French girl, or the Turkish girl to beat the French girl. I was going to take her on the money line at $1.58. Those two together would have been like... maybe 1-1, but I didn't bet. Yeah. Good. You bet the underdog. I thought you said the underdog won. No, you bet the French girl, the Turkish girl. The French girl was 36 years old. Come on, Boston Mikey. Boston Mikey, I told you guys, don't bet on French fighters. Don't bet on French fighters, man. We've learned our lessons for months betting on French fight. We bet against French fighters. Come on. Oh, Magsayo's fighting Magnesi? Nice, Pedro. That's a fight I'm up for. Mark Magsayo versus Magnesi is a good fight. Muscle Brown checking in. Heaven sent Foster versus Fulton on Fedor. Great undercard. The great dude, Fedor versus Thurman. Look, heaven sent. No shade here, but I can't get up. I don't get excited when I hear the names Charlos, Jermel, or Jamal thrown out. So it's not a guy that I even care about. Mike Ross, I told you Saw Poppy is free money. Mike Ross, because I do these lives every day, I think it was probably you yesterday who told me to watch his tape. You were right, mate. Hats off. Saw Poppy got, you know what because, you don't have to be a pro fighter. You guys, if you train for a short amount of time, if you've ever hired a coach, right, and you've learned the technique on how to throw, you'll know there's certain things about learning how to box. On paper, it looks basic. I always tell my clients, the most complex thing about learning how to box is the simplicity of it. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're talking about throwing a jab, there's nothing, it's not rocket science, but the simplicity, the complexity lies in finishing here, turning the punch over, keeping this hand up, having your lead shoulder elevated above your back shoulder here. So, but if you've never thrown a punch, it could take you years to perfect a jab. My point is, when I was watching Bustamante, Saul Poppy train and box, I'm seeing little things that he's doing well that I'm like, okay, this kid's boxed before. I was expecting a gamer off of the couch fighting Tony Ferguson. And that's why I was like, these odds don't make sense. But then I watched Bustamante and I'm like, this kid's trained before, mate. This is a kid who's trained before. He's thrown hands before. He's been coached before. He's probably fought since he was a kid. He operates. I'm not saying he'd ever be ranked, but I was impressed. Granted, where my gauge was here, thinking that he was off the couch. And then when I was watching his tape, I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not betting on that fight. I mean, my heart, I want to see, obviously, El Kukui win. I never like seeing an old, Tony Ferguson lose. So I'm going for Tony Ferguson. I'm just not betting on it. Never bet on the Frenchie, Brandon. You know what time it is. Saw Poppy can fight. Dude completely flipped his life around because of boxing. He's Filipino. I was impressed, man. I was impressed. I like Bud Canelo has regressed. Boston Mikey in the house. Muscle Brown, I also might sprinkle something on the draw. 17-1 Bud Canelo on the draw right now in Australia. Muscle Brown, I want Crawford. Yeah, so Chilltown and I are going to be breaking that fight card down today in a couple hours. 9 p.m. on the East Coast tonight. I'm going live with Chilltown. And Crawford's always, one of my favorite guys to watch. The Ring Magazine, guys, what do you make of this? The Ring Magazine today wrote an article, and they posted a segment of that article on their Instagram. It's also on their website. They're comparing Bud Crawford coming up to fight Canelo akin to when Ray Leonard did it against Hagler. And I'm like, brand names you could compare it to, but they were right. It's not comparable. Only because if you're talking about Bud coming up to fight Canelo, you can't just say Bud's coming up from junior middleweight. Because he's only had one fight at junior middleweight. He only fought once at 154. You'd have to say Bud's coming up from welterweight to super middleweight. Because when Ray did it against Hagler, that wasn't the jump. The difference wasn't here. The difference was here. And if you ask me, I had Hagler beating Ray. Sorry, but they said Ray beat him on the cards. But, and that's a very famous outcome. That's the fight that made Hagler walk away and go to Italy and become a movie star and never come back. Anyway, I think Bud has his work cut out for him because even though you put muscle on, even though you walk around at a certain weight, think about our bodies as operating systems. You know what I'm saying? How much energy, how much data does this operating system need to function at a high level? How much data or energy does this operating system require or is used to operate at a high level? And when you take two guys and one is used to operating, at this level at a certain way and the other one's used to operating here, even if they're weighing the same when they meet, there's this gap here that is unaccounted for. It would be like a hard drive that is sort of void of sort of energy, when you need it the most. So it's a tough analogy. It's not something that I've been thinking about. That analogy just came to me right now. It just makes sense in my head. I apologize if it was confusing. But my point is, my heart is with Bud. I'm cheering for Bud. If I had to be a bigger fan of somebody, it would be Bud. My respect is with both guys. How do you not tip your hat to Canelo? He's been in the game. He's an OG of the game. He carried boxing. He's been one of the guys to carry boxing for a long time now, going on 2 decades. Any guy who represents a country, who has a whole nation behind him, who could sell out, who has a specific date in the calendar in the 365 days of the year, a specific date where everybody, even casuals, know, oh, that's a Canelo fight date. Come on, dude. You got to respect him while he's here. You got to give that kid his flowers. And then with a guy like Bud Crawford, who comes into the ring, who comes into his camp, that chip on his shoulder, even though he has the silk sheets now, he has the money now. He's, he doesn't, that chip on his shoulder, when you hear him speak, is still there. A kid who who'd be fighting in the streets if he wasn't a pro athlete. How do you not like that? How he goes about his business, how he operates. So it's exciting. Would I have been the first guy to predict that this was going to go down? No, man. I first heard about it. It wasn't like Bud was talking about fighting Canelo before EJ. That he had never said that. It was, for me at least, the first time I heard Bud bring that up was on the Rogan podcast a month after, or like a week after Bud stopped EJ. So either end of July or early August 2023, he does the Rogan podcast, and Rogan's asking him what's next. And he was kind of flirting the idea. And then when he said Canelo, I remember Joe is like, what? What are you talking about? Canelo's going to come down? He's like, no, I'm going to come up. So it's been about 2 years of thinking about it. I got to get to Albert Bell in a second. Off topic, I'm super happy with Johnny Walker winning. Tony is the man. I can't trust him. Slayte, did I just hear you say you don't get... Slayte, what I said is... Good point, Slayte. What I said, I didn't say I don't get excited about both Charlos. It's hard for me to get excited about a fight that isn't confirmed yet. So I needed to clarify that point. Because obviously, every time Jermell or Jamal fights, I watch them. But right now, you know what I'm saying? In boxing, it's a slow week. We have a lot of big fights right in front of us. Whenever, social media influencers in boxing, or even in this case, because we know Charlo's been tweeting the lion with the shark, the lion with the giraffe. That was my favorite one. It's tough for me to get excited unless we see that official. That's what I meant, but appreciate you calling me on that. Hagler got robbed. I think he got robbed. Albert Bell. I think Albert Bell by decision, Mike. You know what I'm saying? He's a clean boxer, not a big knockout guy. Undefeated. I think he's 32 now. What is he, 27-0, maybe 9 stoppages? It's a hometown show. He's an Ohio boy. I think the card's in Toledo. The lack of promotion. Top Rank shelved him for so long. He leaves Top Rank, I think, in 2022. Not an active guy. He's a tough matchup. I mean, what guy with a household name is going to want to fight a guy like Albert Bell? You know what I'm saying? So without a proper promotion, without proper backing, it'd be nice to get Turkey to get Albert Bell on some of these Riyadh cards, because he's an X factor. You think you're a great boxer? You think you can win rounds? Beat this guy. Paulo bet on Crawford 2 months ago. I haven't seen any sign cash out. No. He posts strong parlays in the Discord, my guy. Andy Ruiz. I saw that, Pedro. I shared that on my Instagram. Guys, if you're not following the Instagram, if you want to link up there, the Instagram, I use my Instagram stories to share a lot of up-to-date training footage. Discord, we keep the Discord gambling, right? But I'm a nerd when it comes to all sports. Pretty much football, baseball, basketball, and boxing and MMA. But I keep my socials strictly combat. I shared Andy Ruiz Andy Ruiz frustrates me more than any American fighter, any North American fighter, because his hands, dude, you don't ever see heavyweights with that speed. And I remember when he was on Rogan, this is when I used to watch Rogan. I had to stop watching him a couple years ago. But before, maybe like up until 2023, maybe, I remember it was like November 2023, I had to stop listening to Rogan because he started saying some outlandish, crazy shit about health and fitness. But Ruiz was on Rogan after he beat AJ. And mate, it was like, dude, you just beat AJ, mate. You just become a world champion. Like, you could do anything in the world. And he just totally disconnected. He just totally disconnected from what got him there. So I've always cheered for him. His hand speed, dude. You can't get past that hand speed, especially being so big. I'm a fan. Hopefully he gets back and looks good. B Money, I see Canelo ahead early and Bud dominating late. Canelo fades, Buds gets stronger as the fight goes on. What's next for Resendez, Plant, Munguia? I know. Heaven sent, right? It's a good question. Pretty much heaven sent. What's next for that division? You know what I'm saying? I mean, they got new blood with Hamza. I want to see Alam Hanalei go to 68 and fight all these guys. Do you think Janabek Alam Hanalei loses to any of those guys? Does he beat Resendez? Does he beat Plant? Does he beat Munguia? Does he beat Bruno? It's a good question to ask. He did the Mexican Bull for Virgil. Yeah, he did. He did the Virgil Boots, the Philly one. Yeah. Slay, Tay. Yeah, understandable. That's what I meant. And, a motivated Charlo. Let's go. All these guys were talking. A motivated Ruiz, a motivated... Dude, these guys are savages. I understand. It's not like it's irrecomprehensible to think why Andy Ruiz got sort of complacent. He became a world champion. It's unless you're grounded in the right sort of anchors, you get everything you've ever worked for your whole life. When you come from nothing, it's tough to stay driven. I don't use the word motivated because I think motivation is a scam. I use the word driven. Motivation is external. Being driven is internal through our habits. So a guy who's worked his entire career to get to a specific place, when he gets there, it's tough to keep that drive. One of my favorite quotes about this, Buster Douglas was giving an interview years after. Boxing Fan with the super chat. Appreciate you. Thanks, Boxing Fan. Let's get 40 likes. I donate a free membership. Boxing Fan, that's a steep hill. We're only at 13 likes. But one of my favorite interviews, Buster Douglas, years after the Mike Tyson fight, was being interviewed about the whole experience. It's well documented. You guys know the 40-1 underdog. You know his mother passing away. You know the invincibility of Mike going into that fight. You know about Tokyo. You know what happened, right? The outcome. Buster Douglas knocks out, at the time, a basically unknockable, an unknockable out guy in Tyson. We got to invent words to what happened back then. He says, Douglas said in this interview, that whole fight camp, everybody around him, and this is my point about being driven with Charlo, Ruiz, when guys get to the top and they lose focus. He said everybody in his fight camp the entire time getting ready to fight Mike prepared him to win. Everybody in his fight camp knew that he was going to win. They were the only people in the world who knew he was going to win. He was like, where he fell short, though, was that nobody prepared him to live afterwards. Nobody prepared him. His coaches, his mentors spoke to him about how to act afterwards. They only prepared him mentally to win. So when he won, it was like he had to figure everything out on his own. He didn't know how to live like a champion. He didn't know how to process it mentally. He didn't know how to operate as a world champion. He was always operating as an underdog, as the guy who was going to get knocked out against Mike. And they prepared him to win, but nobody prepared him how to operate as the guy who knocked Mike out. And it makes a lot of sense in terms of, what you saw. Because Buster Douglas, an Ohio guy, man, dude, that jab, tall, dude, when he would cook, man, he was a good boxer, even up until the Tyson fight. I'm not sitting here and say I was picking him to beat. I knew he was going to beat Mike. But, that it just shows you that version of him against Mike, that's him at his best. If we would have seen that his entire career, we're probably potentially looking at a guy who probably would have been a Hall of Famer in Douglas. 100%. Even on his toes, his speed, the jab, reflexes, long, his reach. Janabek has a weak resume. Nobody wants to fight him, Mikey. No one wants to fight Janabek. Heaven sent, have you guys heard the news about Ankalaev? 2 more fights and he moves to heavy. Have you guys heard the news about Jai Apatai? In boxing, Jai Apataya just tweeted yesterday. I shared it on my Instagram. He's moving to heavyweight. Did you bet on a Leaf? FX Coaching, I gave you my picks. I didn't gamble on those fights yesterday. I told you to take the Turkish girl. I told you to take Sajo, the 2-leg parlay. I didn't bet on it, though. I think they both won. The Turkish girl was $1.55, and Sajo was like $1.10. But if you could have got him by stoppage, you would have got him at $1.60. So $1.60, you would have got nice plus money. I think it was a 240. 100 would have got you money back plus 140. I didn't bet on it. Pablo, B Money has looks so slow in his late fights. He could even cut the ring to skull. C Crawford clearly dominating early rounds. Hope you're doing well today. Frank B, we wish you well as well. Pedro Cabrales, Apataya shot that down, Johnny. Oh, okay. I didn't follow up. Good call, Pedro. So I guess Jai's not going to heavyweight. He shot it down. He wants to unify light at cruiser. Damn random, but Cowboys just traded Parsons. I didn't know that. Micah. Yeah, he's really been a shell of himself lately, though. And I guess he Sal's ball stock doing some NFL chat. In Australia, they call NFL gridiron. So if you hear me say gridiron, that's just because I've been down here in Aussie since 2013. But I grew up playing football. I played quarterback my entire life and outside linebacker. I grew up playing outside linebacker when it was actually an outside linebacker position, a traditional 4-3 up front, meaning that you're split almost like a cornerback. So in pass routes, I'd have to cover the corner. But first and foremost, I'm hitting that end off of the line, and I'm coming at the quarterback, or I'm reading the running back game. And then, you look for the read pass option and then decide if you have to drop back in coverage. But I played that from the time I was 7 until I was 18, so it's always been in my life. I'm a diehard Browns fan, diehard Buckeyes fan. Those two will never change. Michael Parsons, mate, you've seen footage of him in the offseason, even in preseason. He looks disinterested. Dallas is a tough place to play. And sometimes, he's not old. Sometimes a change of scenery could be the best thing for these guys, especially a defensive guy who has an engine on him, who relies a lot on momentum. These are momentum sort of positions. This isn't a position like a quarterback position where you get the rock every single play, or basketball where, the system of the sport, you're touching the ball every play. Mike has had to deal with double teams and triple teams, more often than not coming off that line his entire career. Obviously, who we got coming off the edge in Cleveland, one of the GOATs. So it's a position I know really well. Pablo says Canelo is an entrepreneur who boxes twice a year. I mean, he kind of built himself into that, though. I mean, so Pablo, that's actually a compliment. You're complimenting him, right? Jai versus Moses, who wins? Ooh. See, these are future fights. This is what I was saying to my buddy earlier on the chat about when he asked me about Charlo. When I say I don't get excited about it, it's hard for me to get excited about future matchups that aren't official. 24 likes to do that free membership. Boxing fan, let's get it up here. Yeah, but heaven sent Lawrence Okoli should pray he can keep getting tune-ups. I like that. Do you think it's possible that Zhang will make a comeback and defend against Body? I don't know, heaven sent. It's a good question. I don't know. I've never been Big Bang Zhang. I don't know, man. He's, when you look at his neurology, how I never use the word fried. I never use the word shot. But the heavyweight division is a tough division to, especially, you got to ask yourself when you're, high-level boxers is when you're coming off losses or you've been a champion before or been close and then you're getting up in age in your 30s and you're still taking fights, you got to ask yourself as the fighter, what am I fighting for? What is the landscape of the division? Do I still look at myself as a world champion? Can I still climb the ladder to become a world champion? If not, what am I doing this for? So these are questions if I was Zhang, I'd be asking myself. Jai's the only guy who I can see having a chance against Usyk. I'd love to see that fight. This is going to be an unpopular opinion, guys. Pedro, you guys are going to crucify me for what I'm about to say. I think Justice Hooney, he'll never get that fight. I think Justice Hooney would give Usyk all that he can handle. This sounds crazy to say. I do, man. Usyk does not have, what was Justice's downfall was that obviously getting hit with that punch in the 11th against Fabio. I mean, you guys wouldn't say Usyk has power like Fabio, would you? He at least doesn't have that one punch crack. We know that. Not as big. Justice Huni could box, dude. I would in an alternate timeline. Even if there was, I would love to see Huni box Usyk. Just as a boxing fan, I'd like to see how those two would match up. Aaron McKenna, I just put on my Instagram yet last night, Aaron McKenna, because the Ring magazine shared their rankings at 60. And had McKenna, I think, at 9th. I have McKenna at 3rd. I put Aaron McKenna in my top 3. Aaron McKenna's a dog, and he's been calling all their names out. He wants Adames. He's been calling out Hanalei. I would have loved to see McKenna versus Hamza. We know Hamza went up. Pedro says, how do you think your Browns will do this? Come on, Pedro. I'm a Browns fan. No, if you know any Browns fans, you know what I'm going to say. It's just tough being a Browns fan. I just want them to not embarrass our franchise. I want them to be competitive. I'm tired. Bro, stop. Dude, I don't even want to talk about Cleveland Browns right now. I don't even want to talk about them. Dude, I've watched. Don't even bring up the Browns yet. We'll talk about them in a few weeks. We got 92-year-old Joe Flacco, throwing the pill. That's fucking, dude. Letting Baker go to pick Deshaun up. I mean, that's insane. Especially when you see what Baker's done. Go back to Baker's last game in Cleveland, the Kansas City game. The game right before the AFC Championship. We had Nick Chubb in his prime before the year before fucking Minkah Fitzpatrick and that fucking injury. And we're beating KC the entire game, dude. Go watch the last 2 minutes of that game, how things just unravel. Fluke penalty flags, reverse play calls, and we ended up losing to KC. And they end up getting rid of Baker to get Deshaun in the offseason. Baker then, I think he goes to Carolina or somewhere and then plays that one game, flies overnight to play for the Rams and had this amazing performance on national TV primetime, and then ends up playing the following year, obviously in Tampa, and we know what he's just been doing in Tampa, cooking. Baker is a guy you want in your locker room. I said the word momentum earlier regarding sports, regarding playing D-end, but quarterback, dude, in a franchise, in a locker room, you want a dude that the boys will listen to. I played quarterback, obviously not at that level. I only played up until graduating high school, but in the locker room, you need a guy like Baker. And, seeing how the guys rally around him, he's obviously, he's not quite people forget how streaky Brett Favre was. Favre was a guy who, he won a Super Bowl, might have got 2. I think he might have got 1 or 2, played in a couple other ones, and he would just make dumb decisions. He was a gunslinger. He would take risks, but those risks Favre would make, when they paid off, it made him look legendary. Strong arm, savage, charismatic, controlled the locker room. Baker has a little bit of that in him. You know what I'm saying? And just watching how it's just another example in a long lineage of examples of the Cleveland Browns front office making horrible decisions. Cutting Ernest Biner in 1987-88 when Schottenheimer was our head coach, when he fumbled on the goal line, when the Browns should have kicked the fucking field goal to win the playoff game in Cleveland, and Biner fumbles on the goal line, and they trade him in the offseason. He's a young running back. He ends up going to Washington, wins a couple Super Bowls, and had a Hall of Fame, considered a Hall of Fame career. Got rid of him. Dude, the list goes on and on, mate. I don't want to talk about the Browns anymore. Yo-Yo, Yo-Yo's coach is in the house, GMS. So join our Discord and watch on the channel. Whenever you boys see Coach Bermudez pop up on the channel here, he's a Johnny Says insider. He coaches Yo-Yo Yenli. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Yo-Yo. I like, because sometimes guys will use that frame here, a high guard, and they'll use it on the back foot. You know what I'm saying? Some guys will pick and pop with it. Hernandez will put you up against the ropes framing and then have you confused on what he's going to do. He does the head feints here. Dude, fucking a nightmare to deal with. It's going to be interesting how they carry him, how Yo-Yo evolves. I don't expect him to have a letdown performance like we saw last week with, people always compare Yo-Yo with, who I'm thinking. It's been a long week. I want Elijah to take a tough test. Not happy how I robbed Goucher. He didn't rob Goucher, mate. All he could do is fight. I like Elijah. Still young. Every time Elijah fights on the channel, I feature him. Love watching him play. More, I like the collection of young talent at 60. Cedeno, Yo-Yo, McKenna, Ramos Jr., those names. Oh, 100% more. 160 people sleep on. Boxing has a lot of, we got a lot of like prospect, like there's a lot of guys in this like in-between space, not quite perennial champions, but they're past the prospect stage. And they're in the contender stage, but one electrifying performance would have them fighting for a world title. There's a lot of these guys right now. We just want to see these guys fight each other. Yeah, Parsons got traded, having people. Yo-Yo versus Kyron Davis, my top 10 fights, no doubt. I thought y'all were joking. No, he's out. Am I bugging? Does Yo-Yo look like LeBron? Isn't Yenli only like, you're talking just optically? Maybe. I mean, LeBron's 6'9". Different. I mean, if you had maybe on a screen like this, but if you had them standing next to each other, Parsons on the Packers hurts my Lions. We'll see what type, if he's motivated. More. Browns defense should be strong, anchored by Didn't Denzel just get carried off? Mar, check that out. I heard Denzel Ward got injured 2 weeks ago in practice. I haven't seen a follow-up. Hopefully it was something minor. I know he got carried off. He exited practice. The front office fumbled Chubb's prime. So they fumbled Chubb's prime in terms of not being able to correctly put the right pieces around him. And I remember in 2001, from 2001 to the end of 2002, I was going to the University of Pittsburgh and living in Pitt, going to Pitt, diehard Browns fan. And that year, being a Browns fan living in Pittsburgh, I couldn't wear my Browns colors. Pittsburgh's a diehard football town. And I remember learning when I lived in Pittsburgh what makes that franchise so consistent. When you look at a franchise like Cleveland, since even, I think, Bill Belichick, or you could go back when he was our coach, go back to 88 when Marty Schottenheimer. When the Browns got rid of Marty Schottenheimer, 1988, I was 6. A lot of you boys probably weren't even born. So in 88, Schottenheimer was our coach. And then now, 2025, that is 37 years. How many head coaches has Cleveland had since 88? The reason why that's significant is because when you have a coaching change, that signifies chaos within the organization. Look at Pittsburgh since 88, the same amount of time. They went from, I think they've had, his name slips my mind. I apologize because I'm not a Steeler fan. But the guy who was there before Bill Cowher, so you had that guy, his name will come to me. You had Bill Cowher, you have Mike Tomlin. You have 3. You know what I'm saying? So that's and this is why the Steelers, perennial playoff team. Big Ben won them a couple Super Bowls. They're always contending. In the last 35 years against Cleveland, which used to be the biggest rivalry in the NFL, I think we've won 3 times in 30 years. It was embarrassed since the Browns moved to Baltimore and we had to come back as an expansion team. But the Steelers front office, it's all about that Chuck Noll. So yeah, you had Noll, Cowher, Tomlin. That's it. This is a recipe to win. Cleveland. Go read that, and then look at the quarterbacks. Since the 90s, you had Cordell Stewart, All-Pro. One of my favorite college football plays of all time was when Cordell was playing at the University of Colorado, the Colorado Buffalo, and he had Michael Westbrook as a receiver, and he throws that Hail Mary pass. Colorado college football used to be dominant. And then before that, the 2 seasons before, they had a running back, Eric Bieniemy. So in the 1989 National Championship, I was 7. Colorado played Notre Dame, and Notre Dame had Rocket Ismail. He returned kicks, played running back, kind of a split-out sort of position like a flanker. And they had a quarterback named Tony Rice. Number 25, Rocket Ishmael, dude. Come on. In my opinion, one of the greatest college football players of all time. And against Colorado, when they had Eric Bieniemy, you had two of the best backs in the nation playing against each other. And I remember in that game, Rocket returns a kick for 6, and the flag gets thrown. It gets called back. They re-kick it, and Ishmael does the same thing. He does it again. Dude, I was 7. I remember learning the Notre Dame fight song as a 7-year-old. Oh, hello, Notre Dame, stirring the echoes, chanting a name on my death. And I remember my dad hearing me humming it, and he yelled at me. I'm 7. He's like, Johnny, the hell are you singing that for? You're a Buckeye fan. And so from that, because I was a huge Rocket Ishmael fan as a 7-year-old, and I remember not being allowed to watch Notre Dame football. And then last year, when the Buckeyes, that Notre Dame love affair ended in 1990, though, by the way. I only liked him, but I always kept an eye on him. But yeah, Rocket Ishmael, one of the best college backs of all time, in my opinion. Adu in the house. Stephen Edwards should have thrown the towel. Kyra and Hernandez fight, pointless beating. Breadman, these guys are proud fighters, proud coaches, guys. You got to, in their head, they're like, my guy's going to come back. When you have a guy, it's tough to be critical on coaches, especially when you have a guy. Breadman knows his guy more than anybody else, right? So it's easy for us to look back and say, damn, they should have fucking stopped that fight. But at the same time, the opposite end of that, he knows his guy more than anybody. He thinks in his head in that moment that his guy is going to come back. He thinks that, all right, it's taking a little longer, but I've seen him this before. He's going to come back. He's going to come back. He's going to come back. And sometimes you don't come back. And then I guarantee Edwards would be the first to say it was on him. I think Abbas Barrell looks like Hopkins and Crawford. Rudy Pedroza, what are you talking about? It's a good chat to have. I think you're talking about his fight style? I don't even know what is that? I don't even know. This is how old I am. This is how out of touch I am with stuff. Heaven sends GMS put on the elect a message, and I don't even know how to decipher this. He says, if you watch the anime Solo Leveling, so I guess that's a cartoon, which I have no idea. Yenli Hernandez reminds me of Ant King. Okay, so that is a comparison to an anime cartoon. Aura farming against the S. What is aura farming? What does aura farming mean? If you watch the anime Solo Leveling, comma, I think, Yenli Hernandez reminds me of Ant King in quotation, so a character, adjective, aura farming. So aura farming is a description of an action against the S-class heroes. Aura farming. I have no idea what that is. Teach me. Have you seen the underdog card, Johnny? The underdog card. Is that a promotion? Definitely looks like Crawford in the face. Oh, you think that Barral looks like Crawford? I don't think so at all, man. Barral has a bit more of a circular face. He has more of like a wider, pudgier face. Crawford's way more chiseled and, higher cheekbones, narrower head. Even the brow is different. Crawford's brow is different. It's going to be more sort of here. Barral has that sort of wraparound brow. Sorry. It's okay. Don't apologize. I'm learning. My grandmother, she passed away when she was 93. And she told me once, she said, don't ever stop learning the lingo. She was like, as you get older, once you stop learning the younger generation's lingo, it ages you. So I'm just super, I've always been really authentic and really, I don't mind being vulnerable. So on my channel, you guys could always expect me, if I don't know something, asking you guys. So I'm not going to sit here and act like I know something when I don't. So yeah, don't apologize. Aura farming is basically stealing the show that's a dope phrase. So aura farming is stealing the show or looking super. So would aura farming be like a B-side in a boxing match who wins? Like let's say Barral. Did he aura farm this weekend? Or is that not how you use it? Because aura farming, is it premeditated? Did your boy who aura farmed in the anime, did he go into that situation premeditating he was going to take that shine? Or does it happen sort of coincidentally? Crawford's face on Hopkins' head. Okay, I mean, that's actually, that, because, Hopkins does have that wrapping around head. Is the one with Princess Eluquaga versus Camacho main event. I think it is main event. You bet on Saturday's card. Joel, are you talking about the Albert Bell card? Because, guys, on my betting app, the only fight I'm getting is Albert Bell, and the odds are insane. Rando, I hear you haven't sent Pedro Cabrales, Brian Norman when he knocked out Santillan. Okay, or when Santillan beat Rocha. That whole Brian Norman's whole timeline, actually, so far. If you start Brian Norman's timeline at Rocha versus Santillan, even though Brian wasn't, obviously he's connected now, Rocha favored against Santillan, Santillan wins. Santillan fights Norman. Santillan favorite against Norman, Norman wins. When you look at how the dogs went into both fights and how they won, and how Norman kind of like took all of that hype, threw it on his back, and he's like carrying it with him now. Brian Norman, we knocked out. Yes. You boys taught me something today. I like it. I never heard of that, but I like that phrase, aura farming. That's dope. I never heard that. Doing the pose. Or when Ryo knocked out old mate, standing on business pose. Ant King was put in that position, but anime they do on purpose, same way movies. I got it, man. Some of the coolest people I know are into anime. I gotta be honest with you. I don't got nothing to get to anime. It's just, I think I just missed that boat when Michael Jackson stepped on stage. Okay, so swag? Because I grew up, swag. That boy's swaggy. It's when you do something memorable. Okay. So it could be, aura farming could just be like a one action. It doesn't have to be, because when I hear aura farming, it sounds to me like a procession or a long process. Like aura farming, it has to take you at least like X amount of time to aura farm, not like one punch. But I guess I understand now. That gets a lot of it. Hector Bermuda's in the house. Thanks for the super chat. I'm in the building. Yo-Yo will definitely fight Henley. Nice, man. Hector, we appreciate you. Thanks for the super chat. Yo-Yo will definitely fight. Joel, you getting 10 fights? What book are you using, mate? Joel O says he's getting 10. Are you guys getting 10 fights? Depth, what's up? Johnny, don't let these guys confuse you. Aura farming basically means flexing in an action or event, but doing it unexpectedly. Okay, I get it. I like the phrase. I think I understand. Appreciate the explanation for all you boys. Alex Pereira. Okay. So how did this come about? Like, what was the genesis of the phrase? I mean, we know we know that this has happened all through humanity. And then the phrase just changes, vernacular changes, verbiage changes. When's the first time you guys heard of the phrase? Like, where did it show up in anime or video games, and then it's kind of broken through to pop culture? If I get into it, tell my opponent I'm an aura farm you. Here's. Did I ever tell you this story, guys? In college, I used to hang out with a dude named the Snake. He called himself Jake the Snake. I called him Grimy Jake, and then it just got shortened to just Grimy. But my boy Grimy, when we would go out in college, we'd go all to the seediest bars on campus. He would bring his mouthpiece. And I've seen him multiple times. Right before we would get into a fight, he would put his mouthpiece in. Would that be aura farming? So my bookie. Oh, so Yo-Yo versus Janibek. Let's go, coach. Let's go, coach. Is that too much too soon though for Hernandez? Damn, I wish I had my bookie. I don't get any of those fights, mate. I get one fight right now. What's your take on EV 44 ounce? What's your take on the heat Boots is receiving for help? Great question. I think that guys, the idea that people are hating on Boots for training with Canelo, especially when they're using race or they're trying to be divisive about it, the people who are using race and divisiveness on trying to gatekeep what Boots' actions should be are casuals, 100%. So whoever you're watching, whoever's making videos, whoever's telling you that Boots should be doing a certain thing, that person is A, gatekeeping, projecting onto his audience on an expectation of somebody else, another grown man, and B, that person is a casual. Could you imagine being Jaron Ennis, 27, 28-year-old young man who gets the opportunity to go to camp with Canelo? Get out of here. That's amazing. That's amazing. Like you have to look at a fighter, a coach, an athlete, a student of the game, somebody who breaks down anything, an analytical mind, will look at the decision-making process of whatever we're talking about, in this case, Jaron Ennis going to Canelo's camp, we'll look at that analytically for what it is. And what that is the younger fighter being able to upskill himself, get the brush of a guy who's been in the game longer, pick up little tips and tricks from a guy, especially in a combat sport. You don't get a Canelo in the gym at Philly. You know what I'm saying? Jaron's not, dude, I guarantee he jumped like a kid. He would never admit this. I guarantee he jumped up, bet, let's do this. Canelo wants me to come. 100. Like, because in his head, he wants to be the best of all time. Boots is thinking, not thinking about Bud. He's not thinking about loyalty because, certain people think like skin color. This is competition. This is problem solving at the highest level with dire consequences. People get killed in this sport. You could die. People stepped in the ring and didn't step out. The idea that there's loyalty based on other people's projections and other people who've never thrown a punch before get to gatekeep the decision making and then judge the decision making of a pro athlete is freaking insane to me. I think this is a newer thing, by the way. So I don't know who's saying that. To even think that that is controversial is insane to me. That's all I'm going to say. Did Boots and Yo get any work in while in camp? You got to think they did. Henry Williams, yo, Hector Bermudez in the chat. Yeah, Henry Williams, that's Coach Bermudez. He's always in the chat. Trains out of the ghetto. Oh, great coach. We got a lot of love for Coach Bermudez. He's always in the chat supporting the channel. This is helping Boots more. This ain't no Paul. 100% haven't sent. EV, facts. Fresh BX Crawford on homie is part of that. Bernie the boxer. But you know who Bernie the boxer thinks he's Bernie and I have gotten into it on social media before. You know what Bernie gatekeeps YouTube channels, by the way. Bernie's been on my channel before talking trash. When I did a breakdown video, the dude is, look, I respect Bernie as a man. I respect the fact how loyal he is to Bud. But at the same time, when you're a grown man, you got to check your emotions. Little boys react emotionally in stressful scenarios. I talked about this earlier in the live stream, earlier in the week. Men keep their emotions in check in any phase of life, in any stressful scenario. So to see Bernie gatekeeping, he thinks he's Boondini Brown. I called and I told this to Bernie. I said, Bernie, you are a broke man's version of Boondini Brown. And if you don't know who Boondini Brown is, that was Muhammad Ali's hype man. So everything you see Bernie doing, trying to get camera action, trying to steal the spotlight when Netflix is there, in all of Bud's fight camps. And you know, hats off to Bernie because Bernie's been with Bud since day one. So it's not like Bernie's a new dude who's like trying to swagger jack Bud. But what he's doing is the greatest. It's already been done before, mate. You're basically regurgitating a dude in Boondini Brown, and making it like it's your own. And then you're trying to gatekeep people when they even. I did a video on when Bud fought EJ. I did a two-part video series on. I titled it "How Errol Spence Beats Bud Crawford," and then I put "How Terrence Crawford Beats Errol Spence." He only saw the first one, how Errol Spence beats Bud, and all the video was a statistical analysis breakdown, just as I do now, with no opinion, with stats and a predicted game plan. And he goes in my comments, starts talking all this trash, and I'm like, bro, man, stop. You're missing the entire point. Like, so you're telling me we can't live in a world? You want boxing analysts? You want people who commentate on the sport to just give you a one-sided approach? You know what happens when that happens? You get guys on YouTube with hundreds of thousands of subscribers who create an echo chamber, who only give you boxing casual takes, who then that trickles down into the new boxing fan. And now we have a whole generation of new boxing fans who become casuals to no fault of their own because they listen to this guy on YouTube who are making one-sided opinions. It's insane. Henry, Johnny, do you think Albert Bell knocks Keith out? I don't know, man. Henry, it's tough for me to take a guy with like Albert Bell to win by stoppage. And I'm not betting on that fight, Henry. Guys, we already won our money this week. We're already up. We hit Wednesday Dana White Contender Series. I gave you guys a plus 270 and a plus 295. We hit a 5-leg parlay, let's eat. And then we hit a 240, a 270 method of victory, let's eat. So I'm not forcing it this week, boys. We got college football. We got big fights on the horizon. If you want to sprinkle a little something, feel free to do it. But, sometimes the best bets are the ones we don't make. Johnny, when you fight, do you let your hands go? So if I'm boxing, if I'm sparring, so by nature, my fight style, just because how I learned to box as a kid, has always been defensive minded. I love countering, and even in like, I'm 43 now. I have to reference that because I made a promise to myself maybe when I was 30 to never get into a street fight again, to use my words, to be a man, to be a gentleman. So I haven't been in a physical altercation in public for almost 15 years now. But as a kid boxing, and by nature, I'm a counter boxer. I don't like bullies as well because I used to get bullied. I was a really small kid. So when I was street fighting, I would never let the guy throw the first punch. My dad raised me, Johnny, don't ever let a stranger throw the first punch. The first punch is them getting in your face or them being aggressive to you. So, I've dropped many a dudes by just throwing one punch. I've never snuck anybody. I'm not a dirty fighter, but you're out in public, especially growing up where I grew up. Dudes run their mouth, come out of nowhere. I don't say anything. I'm not a shit talker. I don't speak. I just stand there and wait. Somebody's in my personal space. You give them one warning. The only punch I've ever thrown in a street fight was my jab, by the way. That's the only punch I've ever had to throw in a street fight was my jab. 99% of guys that I've met in my life, 99.99% of guys I've ever met in my life who I've had trouble with in public were not fighters. The nicest men I know, the nicest boys, the nicest guys I grew up with were the most trained fucking fighters. I never ran across a guy who was trained who started shit with me. It's always dudes who don't know what the fuck they're doing, projecting out their own insecurities, trying to impress somebody, and it's always those guys who get beat up. Who won the chick fight you were talking about? The Turkish girl one. So we hit the Turkish girl one. Yep. The digital dog track. Anyway, you were listening. Haven't sent. I hope Javier Herrera fights again. Hasn't fought since March. He was on Nick Ball. Yeah, you're not the first person Heaven said to bring up Javier Herrera. He got a lot of people want to see him fight. Henry says, who do you like? Jermaine Franklin coming up. Franklin by knockout. Oh shit. Are you talking about give me 1 second. I need to double check that. Okay. I gotta sit down with that a little bit. Bernie Vershawn. No, I wouldn't fight Bernie. Bernie, like I said, Bernie's a former boxer. I would never fight or get offended by somebody because of we disagree. But from Bernie's perspective, he doesn't like people disagreeing with him. That's on him. That's not on me. I got no problem debating somebody or disagreeing, keeping it logic. And Bernie's not the type of dude I don't think he's the type of guy to be a bully. He's a fun dude. I'm a fan of him. I like his fun-loving approach. I like how he hypes up Bud. But you cross the line when you start trying to infiltrate conversations and try to gatekeep and call people out because they disagree with you. What are we doing here? Like, come on, mate. So you fight like Cambosis. Maybe that's part of why you like him. No, I like George because, and if I were to fight like George, and you gave me that comparison, that's a huge compliment. George is a former world champion. He dodges no smoke. I like George because he's been underrated his entire life in Australia. He never got marketed in Australia. The mainstream never wrote about him. He had to go overseas to get his work in. He put his hand up to train with Manny Pacquiao overseas. And that fight after he had Manny, he helped Manny get ready for that fight. They had hundreds of rounds sparring, and George goes out and has the performance of his life against Teo, which then propelled him, to big fight after big fight. So if you any comparison to George Kambosos is a compliment. Johnny comes from Long Beach, of course. So Joel, I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio. So my hometown for my first 18 years of life was Youngstown, Ohio, which is a fight town, steel town. Boomba Mancini, Ernie Shavers, Henry Arroyo, Kelly Pavlik, boxing town, football town, steel town. I always tell people Youngstown, Ohio, the years I'm 12, 13, or 14, even dudes who were pussies growing up, they would fight. Like, it's the only town I ever lived in where a dude going into a street fight who knew he was going to lose would still fight you. So you knew you had to at least fight this dude. And the older I got, living in Pittsburgh, living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, I lived in Long Beach from 21 to about 28. That wasn't always the case. I punked a lot of dudes in Long Beach, in South Carolina for sure, drunk dudes who run their mouth. You then approach them, you take it to that point of no return, and you wait for them to either back down or throw a punch, and they would be the ones backing down. Youngstown, dude, it was like you had to have this mindset like, shit, it's going down, I got to throw hands. And what that taught you is like always have a quick trigger, but use your words. Street fighting's stupid, dude. You can't do. The world was different back then, boys. It sounds so like a cliche and a kind of generic trope, a generic Hollywood trope, but it is true, man. There multiple times in college, me and the boys would get in fights with dudes, and we would be partying with them after, or they would come to our house to have beers, or we see them the following week and now we become friends. And if somebody messed with them, we would have their back. This is a real thing. I became really close friends with a dude named Joey Umbrello through street fights. And we were on opposite sides. We met in a fucking street fight. 2000, I was 18. And fast forward to 2020, my first documentary, it's on my YouTube channel, when I followed around the world champion in a bare knuckle sport called Lethwei. We filmed in Myanmar, we filmed in Cyprus, we went to Hollywood to pitch to Sony. I brought him. So we've been friends that long. He lived in Arizona, he moved back to Northeast Ohio. I met him in a street fight. And we've been friends for decades. So I don't know if the world's like that anymore. I don't know if you could still do that. You can beat my, come on, dude. I don't want to beat anybody. Why we had this conversation? I gotta end it here, boys. I don't want to beat anybody. I'm not that type of dude, man. I want us to all thrive. I want us all to learn. I want us all to be happy. I want us all to be loved. Dude, I told you before on the live stream, even growing up having to get into stupid fights, I wasn't mad. You'll never hear me scream, raise my voice. I've never kicked anybody. I like problem solving. That's my favorite thing about life, is to problem solve. Whether it is how do I get my career to the next level? How do I take this business to the next level? How do I grow my brand? How do I get better as a human? How do I get better as a brother? How do I get better as a friend? How do I get better as a lover? Whatever that is, that's what I've always been about, problem solving, being able to level up. Guys, I got to lock it up. It's 8 a.m. I got a session downstairs. I got a powerlifting session. I'm going to deadlift with a client from 8 to 9. I'm going to do a sauna from 9 to 9:30. I got to eat. And then 11 a.m. my time, 9 p.m. East Coast, I'm going live with Chilltown Boxing. We're going to break down the Terrence Bud Crawford Canelo fight card, and we're going to leave a lot of the questions up to you boys. I already put that live stream up on my channel. It's pinned. Make sure you hit the alerts. Join our Discord. Johnny says Boxing VIP. That link is pinned down here, and I'll see you guys in a few hours.